I'll just take one.
Just briefly, it's so nice.
If you're late, got a separate protein. I will, in fact, yeah, there's a whole other people.
That's all we're always saying on the when I talk to
Alright, so this is the church friendly class. I appreciate you putting to practice that. Everybody is up close and personal. I don't have. Did you hear about 10% of that?
What?
It was the most important announcement. I can't make it again. Now, see, this is the church friendly class, and I was just commending you for practicing that. There's probably not 3 inches of space between most of you, so that's good.
Try to get more space.
Our first class, actually Roger got us off to a great start in Mark chapter 2 in week 1, and then 2 weeks ago we called it an apology for this class, and basically that means a defense for why this class is necessary. We gave 6 reasons for that, and so we're going to begin to look at some of the specific areas of if you have a sheet, did anybody not have a sheet that ordered one? I think there should have been enough. Tonight's is entitled Lift Up Your Eyes, but before we get to that, it's been a long day, maybe for some of you a long week. I wanted to make this as practical as possible, so I got an exercise for you to begin that hopefully will have a practical input to tonight's lesson. All right, idioms, expressions. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give it to you, the idiom, and you tell me what it means. All right, easy enough, right? You don't have to quote book, chapter, and verse on this part. So here we go. It's not worth a hill of beans.
Worthless. Sorry.
Worthless.
Sorry.
Sorry. Sorry, as in not apology, but yeah, worthless. All right.
Not worth your time.
Not worth your time. Now, not all these are going to be some that you know, but most of them you should be. A different kettle of fish.
Odd.
Odd. Okay. So you must be the idiom queen. All right. Okay.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It's an idiom I just bite the dust. Kick the bucket. Cut me some slack.
Give me a break.
Give me a break. All right. Okay. Break a leg. Well. Okay. Does the cat have your tongue? Okay. She's got 2 left feet. Y'all got some strong feelings about it. Spill the beans.
Tell everybody.
All right. That's the pot calling the kettle black.
Criticizing.
Critical, hypocritical.
That you are guilty of.
Yeah. All right. And you're more guilty, right? Even. Okay. You got your head in the clouds. Daydreaming. All right. Let's sit down and chew the fat.
Talk. Work it out.
Talk. Okay. Did y'all know that? Chew the fat.
Can we get a repeat on that? What did you say?
Chew the fat. Hold on. College guys only. Chew the fat. How many of these other idioms did you not know? Were there others? Raise your hand if there were other idioms you did not know.
We know.
You knew them. Okay. All right. So if I were to have started this Bible class in Cambodia or Tanzania in English, do you think they would have struggled with those? Why?
Because they want to know why you're chewing fat.
Yeah. The cat has my tongue?
Yes.
Spill the beans? Yeah, that happened, when we were cooking last week. It was not they're literal. It's the English language, and let's suppose that they have some familiarity with the English language. What's the further problem? Now, if I were to ask you, if this was an etymology class, give me the history of those phrases, would you have a little bit more trouble with that? I don't know where most of those came from, but I know all my life what they mean because of context. I live in this culture, and those kinds of things have been passed along. Now, when we're talking about church-friendly, a church that is going to be able to connect with newcomers and with especially folks who are coming among us from out in the broader community, sometimes we don't think about some of the insider language and some of the words that we use that may be difficult. I'm not talking about theological terms. I don't care who you are, reconciliation or atonement are not words that you use in your daily language. And so they need some definition. In fact, the Bible helps us to understand what some of those words mean. But we have churchy phrases, don't we? I always forget when I use this illustration. I looked at it twice today. I've got my Ready Wreck collection that I've told y'all about, right? It's a pack of old crushed up Hot Wheels cars that are just my wreck collection, right? But we pray about it all the time, that Ready Recollection. Have you ever thought about what a person who's never been to church very much, what they even understand about that? Maybe that's why the guy or lady that gave me that in Colorado, they didn't have the context, and they were just saying, here you go, here's your Ready Recollection. Or, guide, guard, and protect us. Not maybe that one's a little bit, but sometimes we say it so fast, gotta go to protect us. Folks don't understand what it is, even the phrase that we use. Providential hindrance, very biblical idea. But sometimes we use insider language, special phrases that we have for our own congregation. I've had fellowship halls where I preached, but when y'all were talking about the NPR, okay, and it took me a while. Did it take you a little while to figure out what that was?
Still not. I'm assuming it's all these big rooms together, but I really don't know.
Let me help you. Multi-purpose rooms. We have it set up now, all right? But if you get the walls down, it's a multi-purpose room. I didn't know what that was for a long time. So y'all are, in announcements talking about announcements, others, so forth and so on can be found in the NPR. All right. my little scavenger note. I'm gonna go find it. But we say it now, and something that's come along since we've gotten here that we don't always necessarily give context to the crew. By the way, do you know what crew stands for? 4 letters. Connected. Ready. Equipped. Willing. How many of you up here knew that? A few of you, some of you. We've been doing this now a couple of years. Do we need some context for that? Do we need to help folks to know who the crew is? Maybe there are young adults that are visiting or college students here for the first time. And this is not going to be a problem for us, but maybe if you haven't been to church very often, church, eat church. I think I'll check out now, thanks. I don't know if I'll be around for that. There's things that we say sometimes and we don't give thought to how sometimes it needs some explanation. However, so the invitation, when we say we're going to extend the invitation at the end of this lesson, it's a wonderful expedient. It's got great biblical principles behind it. But if you're here visiting, do you really know what that means? Does it help for us to be able to give some explanation to that? To give people some context? Maybe even when it comes to the Lord's Supper, to talk about what it's all about. Or in a very positive way, to be able to talk about our singing. You may notice something different today. And not to be confrontational, but to be explanational. See, so often we assume, and it doesn't take us very long before we get blind, have these blind spots to the things that we assume that those that come among us know that they don't necessarily. Everything has a language. I I'm a sports guy, but I don't know lacrosse. I don't know soccer. I don't know hockey. I've even been to some hockey games, and they're fun. But I don't know the positions. I don't know names. You know, I know things, very basic things like checking. You know, but I don't know a lot of the other nuances. Now, football, basketball, and baseball all have their own lingo. That if you know those sports, and the more diehards you are, the more down in the weeds of the details that you are in those things. In every occupation, accountants have their own language. Sales and marketing, man, you're the kings and queens of acronyms. And you know, there's all these different things that you know as a part of your profession. IT and computer folks very much have their own lingo. Construction, any kind of occupation, and to be successful at connecting with others, we can't assume. We've got to make sure that we are as explanational as possible, and that we are thoughtful about the fact that there are things, and what may hurt us is if we've always been, we were raised in church all the time, we may not give thought to the fact that there are folks that don't have this intuition. All right? That's your 5% for nothing there. We're going to go in a little bit different direction. Any thoughts or comments before I leave that? Yes, sir, Dan.
One of that kind of a pet peeve for me is the word gospel meeting. Outside of these four walls, that word means absolutely nothing to the world.
Right.
And they'll look at you like you got a third eye. And, you know, it means something to us in here, and we may talk about a meeting as being our gospel meeting. We should never use that lingo outside of these four walls.
So an intentionality that says, who's your target audience? Now, by the way, there needs to be an understanding. All you need to do is read 1 Corinthians 12 through 14, that the assemblies, the worship assemblies are, as you see in the New Testament, were about the saints encouraging and helping and challenging the saints. You know, Paul talks about when outsiders came in our number, they should be able to glorify God and not see confusion. But it's just not wisdom when God's giving us so many visitors and so many new faces for us not to think we're not the only ones here. And if we want others to have greater interest and to be drawn more into God's family, then they need to understand what's going on. Otherwise, it's not worth a hill of beans. So, all right. Lift up your eyes. Y'all have sheets. We're now on the sheets. Can you remember an occasion where you were overlooked in anything? Ignored? Or maybe your child. Maybe it was something that you were involved in. You weren't doing it for credit. Maybe it was on the job. Could have been even at church. And several names were listed, and your name was not among those listed. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't malicious. But especially if it meant something to you, how did it feel to be overlooked? For somebody not to acknowledge the thing that you've done. Unappreciated. Like you're not valued, like your contribution didn't mean as much. It's hard. And by the way, we're motivated rightly. We want to do things because we want God's approval. But especially in other areas outside of church, it hurts if your efforts are not acknowledged. If it's in your home and something that you did, we appreciate being acknowledged and our efforts being seen. I want you to turn to John chapter 4, verse 27. I want you to see, this is very familiar. We preach a lot on it. We talk about this account very often, but I want to look at something a little bit different in John chapter 4. And if somebody who can, in the middle of the room, that can read nice and loud, will read John 4:27 through 36, 38, 35, 27 through 35.
At this point, his disciples came and they marveled that he talked with a woman. Yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way to the city, and said to the men, "Come, see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Then they went out of the city and came to him. In the meantime, his disciples urged him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." But he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. Therefore the disciples said to one another, has anyone brought him anything to eat? Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me, and to finish his work. Do you not say, there are still 4 months, and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields. They are already white for harvest.
Okay, so what stands out to you in the passage that Roger just read? Okay, what Jesus does. Jesus speaks to a woman. Not only a woman, what else? Samaritan woman. If you know further context, what else about her?
She's a shady background.
Unsavory, shady. All right.
He knew what she had done.
She's
He told her
dirty.
what she had done.
Okay. She's dirty to them who?
To the Jews.
To the Jews. Okay. All right. So you see Jesus talking to a woman. What else do you see here?
It's like two separate conversations going on.
So what do you mean?
Jesus is talking about one thing and the apostles are talking about something else. Jesus knows that they're not comprehending, but they totally do not get what's going on.
Okay, very interesting. There's two different conversations happening in one conversation.
Exactly.
All right, what the disciples are talking about and Jesus is talking about. It's a great point. Do you see that there's another sense in which that's true? There's two conversations going on. What are the two conversations going on besides that? What's one conversation?
Jesus with her.
Jesus with her. What's the other conversation?
Jesus with his disciples.
Okay, so all right, okay, fine. I can't add. There's three. There's Jesus and her. Jesus and the disciples.
Her and her people.
And her people,
Her and
the
other
men.
Samaritans.
as well.
But the disciples among themselves.
Okay. All right. So there are obviously 7 or 8 or 15 conversations going on. Here's the two I want to highlight for you. There's Jesus and the woman, and there's the disciples and Jesus, and they're happening right there together. Now I know the woman goes off. But what conversation is not taking place?
The disciples and the woman.
The disciples and the woman. Now, we know why that is, right? Why would that be?
They're Jews and she's a Samaritan.
They're Jews, she's a Samaritan. You just don't do that. Never mind that their master, their rabbi, their teacher is doing that, but they don't. They're,
And that she's a woman.
Okay, so there's all these cultural barriers. Jesus is laying a lot on them in a short period of time that goes against it. It's hard for us because it's not our culture. It was tough for them to get over all the stuff that you mentioned that would have made it a very taboo thing to do what Jesus did. But it's not just the fact that they don't talk to her. What did they say to Jesus about her?
They're trying to get him to leave.
Do they?
They want him to go and eat.
Oh, okay. They want him to go and eat. But what did they say to him about her?
Why are you talking to her?
Okay, what verse?
Verse 27.
27,
Why are you talking to her?
27, the end of
What do you,
27.
Yeah.
what do you see?
What do you
They
see?
didn't say that.
Huh?
No one said that.
No one said that.
Oh. But no one
Yeah,
said.
thank you.
No, that's what
I thought I've gotten confused. They did not. So let me ask my question again. What did they say to Jesus about the woman? All right. Okay. Nothing. All right. Hey, it's the way that we're set up here. It doesn't happen this way much, but in all my years before I got here, we had the kind of the traditional foyer layout where the foyer was where everybody funneled out of the auditorium and then out into the parking lot, and so it was a gathering place more often. And because we're not set up that way, it has kind of gone different for me as a preacher. But I'm gonna say this: I haven't seen this out here as much, but I have seen a lot of preachers. I'm standing in the foyer, and I'm talking to somebody who is obviously, or at least an unfamiliar face. and I'm shaking hands, I'm talking to them, perhaps engaged in, maybe they are expressing a concern, a problem in their life, maybe even if they're setting up a Bible study. And a wonderful brother or sister in Christ comes upon, because there's a compliment, or maybe there's a concern, or maybe there's a conversation of some sort that member wants to have at that moment with the preacher. And I can't tell you how many times it's happened that somebody comes up and they don't elbow them out of the way, but they just kind of walk around them, maybe don't ever even look at them, and have their conversation with me, and then they leave. Wonder why that happens. Why? Now, like I say, I haven't seen you do it much, so let's theorize about these other congregations. Why would we do that? Why would a lot of times they've been non-Christians. Why would we? Is it malicious? Is it intentional? So what do you think it is?
My need is greater than their need.
Okay, selfish. My need's greater than their need. Don't see them.
Lack of awareness.
Lack of awareness.
Impolite.
It's not making us sound very good.
I think for me it's different. I feel like sometimes I refrain from getting to know a newer person because in my own personality it gives me someone extra to have to, I'm not going to say entertain. I don't want to say entertain because sometimes I bring a lot of visitors and they're very, I feel like I need to give them a lot of love and attention, and then I don't really get to be with my sisters and brothers in Christ that I am close with because I'm giving so much attention to them. So to add an additional person to engage in is just an extra, I want to say burden, but I don't mean that.
All right, so I think it's in all fairness, you're more like a preacher in this illustration. You bring visitors all the time, so yeah, I don't think you have to
Yeah,
give
but
much
I thought like, I'm not going to need anybody else new because I just know that I can take anybody else on. You know what I mean?
Well, and maybe to a degree that might explain to us, this looks like, so a lot of times how that conversation is looking is very intense. And that's, you insert yourself into that, what are you inserting yourself into? Intensity. Maybe commitment. Is that what we're called to do?
Personal conversation.
Could be, and we're polite. Instead of impolite, we're polite. Okay. I'm not sure there's one answer, and each one of those situations was different. But I do suggest that these disciples, how would you qualify? What kind of things would you say about the apostles? Works in progress, they're going to be better later than they are then, but these are pretty good guys. They left their professions to follow Jesus. So there's a lot to commend them, but seeing other people is something that requires intentionality. You've got to mean to do it. It doesn't just happen. And Jesus said, you remember at the beginning of the chapter, he said, I have to go through Samaria. That wasn't the prevailing thought of the day. People went out of their way to avoid going through Samaria. What does Jesus mean when he says, I have to go through Samaria? Well, we know. We have the rest of John chapter 4. He needed to do this for those disciples. He needed to do that for us. But what I want you to focus on is the last verse that Roger read. He says, do you not say that there are yet 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, what? Lift up your eyes and look on the harvest. Who's he talking about? Who's the harvest in John 4? The Samaritan, and ultimately it's the people in the village of Sychar that she goes and tells the good news about Jesus to.
This is the same thing as when he told Peter, I'll make you a fisherman of men.
Well, certainly. But so what's the practical application of that? See the woman. See her. Notice that she's there. She's part of the harvest that's ready right now. Now, let me say to you, maybe Jesus would say that to us. If we're not looking reach out and connect with them. And really, ideally, it's a bunch of somebodies that need to. I mentioned Tom Rainier and his, the formerly unchurched. He had a survey of 353 formerly unchurched people. And the question was, what moved them from the unchurched to the churched? What do you think moves people from not being interested in church, coming to church, and being interested in church? Connections, relationships. What do you think they would say besides that? Anything else?
They made me feel welcome.
Okay. What other kind of things do you think that they say?
Activities, things outside the church.
Hard times, life-changing events.
Community involvement.
Okay. They see that the church is interested in the community. All right, what else?
They receive help from the church,
Okay.
help with a specific legal problem.
With various needs. Okay. Interestingly, that percentage is a lot smaller than you would think it is. But there are some that made his list that did that. Anything else? These are all kind of falling in one area. Any other big things you might think that somebody go, oh, because of this, I'm going to stay here?
We weren't judgmental or demeaning.
Okay.
You know, lack of knowledge or familiarity, sometimes if we don't present well, it can come across as we're demeaning or questioning your knowledge.
Yeah, there's a better word that I'm not coming up with.
I know, I can't think of it.
I heard you. I like it fun. All right. Accepting. Okay, I'm going to put that with openness. All right, so let me give you some of the rundown of the numbers because my internal clock says, boy, it's a lot faster than I think it is. 117 mentioned greeters and welcome centers. All right. 111 mentioned organization and worship services, that there was thought, there was forethought, planning put into that. All right. 102 mentioned children's facilities. And by the way, it's not state-of-the-art, top of the line, but a lot of care, a lot of good is, I don't know, if you don't know a lot about that, maybe you're not as aware. There are some people who champion that and have done a good job with that. So if you don't know, that's a good thumbs up too. 161 mentioned nice facilities and adequate space. But 311 mentioned friendliness. Friendliness is most of what you put. Of all the things you could have said that you think might attract people, you were aware that these are the kinds of things, because that's a different way. All of those words are some form of friendliness. It's acceptance, it's openness, it's warmness, it's love that you feel when you come there. Now, George Barna mentioned something that a man said, listen, he's an unchurched person, so take that into consideration. But it would be foolish for us not to listen to him because perception is reality. And here's what he said. I probably wouldn't know good religious teaching from bad, or a great sermon from one that breaks every rule in the preaching manual. But I sure know nice people from jerks and real people from hypocrites. I would stay at a church with lousy teaching but genuinely friendly people, people who got to know me and cared about me and respected my needs and boundaries before I would stay at a place with perfect teaching and lousy people. You can say he shouldn't feel that way. I'd say you're wrong. But he does feel that way. And he represents people who come in the door. Here's the beauty of it. It's not either or. In fact, God doesn't want it to be either or. What does he want? He wants both of those things. He wants us to have the best teaching we can have, the best preaching we can have, and alongside of that, he wants us to be so friendly and warm and accepting that people see Jesus being lived out in the things that we do and who we are. And so that's what Jesus is trying to teach us, folks, in John chapter 4. Let me give you real quick 4 things that can help us to lift up our eyes. I'm assuming it's going to have to be pretty quick. Yep. All right, here it is. Number 1, look for people. Now, here's some neat things from nature. Eagles can see rabbits from miles away. And hawks and buzzards can see rodents from 10 to 15,000 feet above the ground. Owls can turn their heads 270 degrees to be able to see predators and prey. Even though they're a lot smaller than us, their eyes are the same size as our eyes, and their pupils are large. Sharks, they can't see, but they have these sensors. They have these little twitches in their brain that they can feel, that have electric impulses that go when they even get the slightest little twitch of a small fish. They have an incredible ability to be able to see things that are 10 times dimmer than anything we can see. And then you have snakes, those wonderful creatures who have that sensory ability to be able to see things based on heat signatures in between their nostrils and their eyes. They can even detect depth. And sometimes we can't see things that are right in front of us. Wives, your husband stands in the refrigerator. Honey, where is what? X. And what that means is I held my hands out and it didn't fall into my hands. And so, help me, please. All right? I know. So, sometimes, yeah, that's an idiom. So, we only see what we're looking for. I think that's the point. What we really are intently looking for. Think about the woman in the lost parable who's lost the coin, and she scours and she sweeps because she's looking for it. For a lot of us, that may mean retraining what we do before and after church services. To look for individuals. We may not be looking for anyone, or we may be looking for folks that we're more comfortable with. That's an issue of vision, but it's an issue of spiritual vision, not eyesight. We need to be able to see the value of everyone. We need to see everyone else at church services of equal value. That's what James is hitting at in James chapter 2, verse 1 through 7. And we've talked about this in other contexts, about the rich one that comes into your assembly and the poor one that comes into your assembly. And you give one kind of attention to one and not the other. And he says, I want you to see everybody without partiality, because you're not to have the faith of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality, with respect to persons. Those folks in James chapter 2 paid attention to visitors, but they saw them and they treated them differently. And so God's reaction, you'll remember through James, is very strong about that. And so the fundamental change in approach to do with what we do with ourselves before and after is a matter of us revolutionizing how we see those moments before and after the time when we're engaged in worship. So we've got to be able to look for people. All right, that's a very fundamental thing. Now, if you've already got a lot of people that you're taking care of, maybe you're not the one to do that, but some of us, we can look for another person or two. Number 2, make eye contact. Why do so many of us avoid making eye contact? And the statistics abound that we're not eye contactors. Why don't we do that more? Shyness? Too busy? All right, so now why would you say that? Why would that impact your eye contact?
I guess, sometimes if you're not wanting to really tell others how you feel, they'll say, how you doing? I'm good. Walk off. Because you don't want to connect, because you don't want to say anything more, maybe at that time or whatever. So.
Okay, so I think that eye contact and busyness can be 2 things. I'm too busy to tell you what's going on with me, or I'm too busy I know if I make eye contact with you, you're going to tell me what's going on with you. All right? Okay? All right, those are 2. That's good. What else? Why don't we, what reasons do people have for not making eye contact?
Hurry.
In a hurry.
He says in a hurry.
Okay. That's good. I put discomfort. Do you ever not look at somebody in the eyes for various reasons because you're not comfortable? Okay.
For those of us who don't hear, it means we don't hear. We don't look here now, we don't hear you.
Okay, so it's a means of avoidance. Don't want to engage. This is something probably 20 years ago we might not have said as much. Sometimes it's distraction. You know what? I mean, few things I love more than to get this when I'm trying to talk to somebody. That's good. That's good stuff. All right.
Fear of rejection. Maybe.
Fear of rejection. All right, let me give you, Psychology Today gave several reasons, 10 reasons why we don't make eye contact. It can be a distance thing, right? People get too close. You think about an elevator. If you're stepping in the elevator, the last thing you want to do is turn and look at somebody. It's just the way we're wired. What if the topic of the conversation is not something we're comfortable with, right? And so if we feel ashamed or embarrassed, we won't look. A conversation task. People in general look more at cooperators than they do with competitors. When you're trying to persuade people, you tend to look them in the eye more. Number 4, attention. One looks to get and keep attention. That's when you try to engage. That's what you're trying to do. So that if you're trying to avoid that, then you don't. Interpersonal relationships. People look at those that they like more than they don't like. And this is funny. I'm thinking about the experiment that's going to occur after this class ends. I'll put this in your hand. You're going to be thinking about, those things. All right. Number 6, cooperation. The common meaning of eye contact is that a person is interested and engaged, but with certain expressions could be interpreted as a threat. Personality. Extroverts look more and longer. The confident, the bright, the socially comfortable look more. Females look more than males do, or make eye contact more. Physical appearance. People look less at the disabled and the less attractive, and vice versa. Mental illness. Things like depression and anxiety. Those are individuals who are less apt to make eye contact. And then ethnicity. Some cultures are more inclined to make eye contact, and others are less so. So, factoring in that you may be an introverted, depressed man, why is eye contact such a big deal? Why is eye contact generally a big deal?
Shows you're listening.
It shows that you're listening, interest, concern, compassion. So what if you don't make eye contact? What do you convey? Disconnection, aloofness.
Words, but no action.
Okay.
To say, how are you doing, and not actually really care about how you're doing.
Right. You may remember from 2 weeks ago, as Steve Pitcock was sitting in that chair, and I did the old thing you've seen, not just preachers, but other people do, And you're talking to, here's a person right here. So you're conveying an inconsistent message, right? Okay. I would say more. I do want to say this. How do you make the eye contact experience more positive? Number 1, soften your eyes. Instead of a cold, hard stare. Give them thought to that. Well, maybe you're nervous. Maybe you have to coach yourself up before you're in that situation, but you need to soften your eyes. All right.
Smile.
Couple it with a genuine, friendly smile. Add a cheerful, accepting greeting in that situation. Overcome negative past experiences. Maybe you have history with that person. Maybe you just need, and it may be in your head. It may not be what you think it is, but whatever it is, do it anyway. Be expectant. Believe that the other person wants to receive your eye contact, and of course, don't overdo it. For older people in this room, if I said Marty Feldman, that's all you need to know. All right. Number 3. I felt the bottom there, Roger. All right. Still got 3 minutes left. Watch your face. Watch your face. I just alluded to this, but it's easy to send a very powerful nonverbal message. And it may not be the one that you intend to send. At the very beginning of time, did you realize that God watched and noticed the face? You know what I'm talking about? Cain and Abel went to worship. And what does God say to Cain?
Why is your face down?
Why is your face fallen?
Yes.
It's interesting. You should do this as a Bible study sometime. Look at all the times that the Bible shows us God noticing people's faces. It's pretty sobering for me. Because I have to tell you, I inherited this from my dad. This is a Muppets reference. So did y'all ever know Sam the Eagle? Mm-hmm. Right? I have that tendency that I got from my dad. Ask my boys, but I don't just do it when I'm mad. Sometimes it's by default. When my face goes to relax, that's pretty scary. I have that kind of scowl face. What does a scowl say to other people?
What did you do?
Angry, or you want to fight, or something like that, but that's not what you mean. But we got to give some thought to that, right? And the one place where we can, and paperless singing is awesome. I love it. I think it's doing just great. Our singing's a lot better. One thing it's deprived us of is that interaction between the song leader and the folks who were singing. Now you may be going, what are you talking about, Neal? I always sing like this, you know. But ideally, looking up at the song leader, and there are some song leaders in this room. It is when we've had singing seminars in the past, when the one that comes and teaches that says one of the most important things, and if he's like critiquing song leaders, the one thing he says over and over again is smile. Smile. Why is that hard, song leaders, to smile when you're leading singing? Be honest, we're family. Well, that's maybe you're nervous. There's a bigger reason.
I'm always trying to catch my breath.
Okay. Fair enough. Hey, is the folks out in the assemblies, are they always smiling? Sing and be happy today? Well, what do you have to do as a song leader?
You're leading.
You're leading. You're setting the tone, right? But what it says is that people pay attention to your face. There's a guy, best song leader I know, not the Andy Baker in Nashville, the Andy Baker in Texas. Man, he is awesome at this. Just go to PTP or somewhere. You can find places. He leads singing all over the place. Just watch him. He makes you want to worship because of his pleasant demeanor. How about us doing that? How does our face affect others? If you want to try that out, just go randomly smiling at people and see what happens to that. All right, number 4, see souls. See souls. This is the motivational piece. Why do we look for visitors and newcomers? Why do we do that? Because they have an ever-dying soul. God died for them. God sent His Son to die for them. We're lifting up our eyes to see the harvest. Seeing souls requires a unique aptitude. We've got to see past their physical appearance. We've got to see past their rowdiness or obnoxiousness. We've got to see past their spiritual problems. When the folks are among us that we don't know, that are newcomers or that are visitors, we need to see that they may be at a very pivotal point in their spiritual journey, and we may help them go to heaven. Now let me say this before the next bell rings. Nobody wants to be overlooked because we don't want to feel insignificant and forgotten. And that should never, ever happen in God's house. In Psalm 142, David goes into the cave and he says, I look to my left, and I look to my right rather, and see, for there is no one who regards me, there is no escape for me, no one cares for my soul. Nobody ever should come into Lehman Avenue Church of Christ, be among us, and leave and be able to say, no one cared for my soul. Second bell ring.